Hey, it's Jacob from Orangewood, and welcome to Tone Testers, where we put your guitar tone preconceptions to the test. Today, we're going to be taking a look at the age-old wood debate, mahogany versus spruce. Is there really even a difference between these two tone woods? Some players might choose between these two guitars based on appearance alone, but there's probably more to it than meets the eye. For example, with an organic material like wood, there's going to be tons of variables that will probably impact the sound. One of those being density. We know that it's going to have some impact on the sound, but let's find out exactly what that is. Joining us today is Shane Lance, professional mixing engineer and TikTok star, who's going to help us get technical with the audio and give us his expert opinion on the sound. So in my hands, we have the Ava Mahogany, and over here we have the Ava Torrefied Spruce. So if we expect this one to be darker or warmer, what would you be seeing on the frequency analyzer?
Yeah, as a guitar player, I would definitely expect the mahogany to be darker and warmer. On an analyzer, I'd expect a fuller low and low mid range, and then the top end rolled off a bit, not quite as much brilliance. And then for the spruce, traditionally, we would expect it to be a bit brighter and have some of that snap. So I would guess that the low end would be rolled off a little bit, not quite as much body. Maybe a scoop in the low mids and mid range, and then some of that brightness. So in the high end, some more presence.
Sweet. All right, well, I'm excited to get to the test. Let's mic these up and see what happens. Look, we all know that there's so many guitar comparison videos out there on YouTube, especially between mahogany versus spruce. But we also all know how frustrating it is when the guitars are two completely different price points, or maybe the woods were sourced in different places. We wanted to bring you a video where all of the variables were isolated, so you can really hear the difference between mahogany and spruce. Everything about these guitars is the exact same. The price point is the same, it's the same model. I mean, the wood on the back and the sides is the same, the hardware from the nut, the bridge, the saddle, the fresh Ernie Ball strings. Everything about these guitars is identical, so you can really hear the difference between spruce and mahogany. Let's get into it. All right, Shane, so can you run us through what you saw?
Sure, some guitar science, absolutely. Both were really flat in a positive way and very similar. I would say the mahogany, surprisingly, wasn't necessarily warmer in the way we would expect and the way we talked about mahogany would be compared to spruce most often. Again, still a pretty flat representation. A little bit of a boost around 4K, so it had some brightness to it, actually a healthy, surprising amount of brightness. And just not quite as full, and not in a negative way. I'd say in general it is a more chill guitar, kind of subdued, and I'll talk about it in contrast with the spruce, but I would say I could see that mahogany guitar fitting into a recording well, into a song, whereas the spruce, which I'll talk about in a second, but might be great for an acoustic focused song. The mahogany guitar, that kind of frequency representation, even just playing it, the way it sounds and feels, we both played it, would fit really well into a song. It would represent an acoustic element without taking over a frequency range or getting in the way of other frequency ranges. As you know, you're making a song, you're mixing, you're thinking of where everything fits. It would fit really nicely.
Yeah, I saw that and felt it when I was playing too, and saw it on the frequency analyzer. Is the low end is a lot less present in the mahogany guitar. even though it is just as bright, which is, like we said, pretty interesting. So
Yeah.
it does give it that mellow feel. You mentioned that the torrefied spruce guitar might fit in better with a full mix or whatever, on its own, sorry.
Yeah.
So let's talk about that. How come? What'd you see on your end?
Yeah, absolutely. So that one, again, pretty flat across the board. In general, it's also just louder, I think is one of the main differences, which maybe people don't know this, but that doesn't necessarily mean better. It's just a bit louder, which means it might have a fullness in the low end and then still pretty bright as well. And again, it just projects more. In a recording sense, or even depending on the kind of person who's looking for that guitar, it might be someone who's looking for more an acoustic-based song, or maybe a singer-songwriter who's really looking for something that's going to project out into a room or out into a recording. So, and again, in contrast with the mahogany that kind of sits well, would tuck back well into a recording.
Cool. Thanks, Shane. Appreciate it. Okay, so we've got the sounds all figured out. Tonewood is probably one of the most hotly debated subjects, especially when it comes to acoustic guitars. It's really easy to speculate over what the differences between mahogany and spruce are, but when we isolate all the variables and just look at the woods, this is what we've got. When it comes down to making a decision between the two, the real thing to look at is what kind of player you are. The spruce is a super balanced guitar that would stand out as a solo performer. And the mahogany guitar has an awesome, mellow, subdued sound that will fit into a mix super well. Either way, the guitars both sound pretty similar. There is a definite difference between the sound of these two guitars, but if you were making the decision based off appearance alone, they're similar enough that either way, you're gonna get a good one. Thanks for joining us on Tone Testers. Leave a comment down below what you thought. Do you agree with our results? Want to see more comparisons? Definitely like and subscribe because we've got more videos coming your way.